Do you want a successful food plot? Well, today we're going to give you all the steps that will make that happen. We'll even show you how we do that. Step one, determine on your property where you'd actually like the food plot to be placed. Once you do determine that, the next thing is clear it out. So remove all the stumps, shrubs, and vegetation. By removing the vegetation, all you're going to do is apply Roundup, probably about a week or two before you actually want to build the food plot. So apply it, and what that should do, it should kill all the vegetation in that area so that we're starting out with everything being dead within that area. Then what we want to determine is how big is the food plot. That will help in determining fertilizer, seed. So what you want to do is get the square footage of that food plot. The next step is to do a soil test. We do have a video on conducting a soil test, but we want to do a soil test to make sure that we get the ground to exactly what's needed to successfully grow the plants. Then we want to determine when do we want to plant. A lot has to do with where you're going to plant. For instance, where we're standing, this is a food plot that's really has a lot of sun that hits it. So what we're going to do is we would plant this in July, probably first or second week. I have other food plots that are in a more wooded area. Those food plots will get planted in early April. And when I'm determining the planting, it has a lot to do with what is the forecast. Is rain coming? If a startup fertilizer is needed, the next step will be to spread that fertilizer. So you can either use a hand spreader or you can use a push spreader. So you got that, that will help establish. Now that we have the soil already on the food plot, it's time to till the food plot. So what we're going to do is we're going to just show you a couple different tills that we have. We could use a rototiller, really nice for small areas or areas that are very hard to turn around in. Takes a little work because the rototillers, you know, they're going to do a swatch about that big. So you're going to be doing a lot of tilling. But if that's all you got, it's a great resource. What I have here for doing my bigger food plots is I have a Biolage till that's hooked up to my ATV. So let's take a little look at it here. So this just hooks up to a ball. I'm controlled to going up and down by a crank here. So if I want to go down, this is going up. So if I want to go down, I'm just going to go down slightly. I'm going to look at my till. I want to just barely be going down. So when I do till my food plots, what I like to be able to do is only go 2 to 3 inches down, because here we're in a more sandy soil. So what I want to make sure is that I'm not really stirring up the heavy sand up. And that's what you're going to do if you put your till way too far. Same thing with a rototiller. When I do rototill, I make sure that the blade is all the way up, just so that it doesn't go down and hold up the till. So now that it looks like I have this all adjusted properly, just barely going through, what I'm going to do is just make a couple passes around here. So as you can see, when I do till it up, I don't just go back and forth in straight lines. What I'll actually do is make turns just so that I can get this tilled in many different directions. And when I do this with this biolage disc, the nice thing about it is I can get a food plot done really quick. One other adjustment I want to talk a little bit about here is I also have a pin here. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow me to, if I was plowing for the first time on this food plot, I could throw the pin all the way back. And what it would do is it angled the blades even steeper. And what that does is it really allows you to cut into the ground. Me, I'm really going over existing food plots. So I want to have it in the most straight possible because it's so easy to till this up. The next step, once you till, is actually to drag it. When we looked prior, you saw it tilled up, you saw that there was many little grooves and everything. What we want to do is eliminate all those grooves, because what happens is when you're seeding, the seed will tend to roll right back into the groove, and what you'll do is just have grooves with seed. So what we basically did here is we dragged it with a beam on back of my ATV. And as you can see how nice and flat it is? That's what happens when you drag. So that's what I do prior to seeding. Now that you're ready for seeding, you'll need to determine a couple questions. For one, do you want a perennial seed or an annual seed? Perennial means that it'll come up every year. And most of the time you do have that, it'll be good for probably 2 to 3 seasons before it needs to be replanted. Or you could do an annual. That means you need to plant this every year. Most of the time, it'll be more lush if you plant it every year. So just something to consider, because I do use both. Some of my food plots will be annual food plots, and some will be perennial. So most of the time on the packaging, it'll say if it's perennial or if it's annual. Or if you do research on the type of seed you're gonna plant, it will tell you. Another great thing would be to go and actually go to your local feed mill. They will be able to really help you out because they know the areas you live, or you could tell them, this is basically where my land is, and they'll say, okay, this is a great seed for sunny areas in that area, or this is a great seed for shady areas. And that can really help you with a successful food plot. Personally, when I'm starting a food plot, I like to use clover first, because clover, besides being great greenery for your animals that are on your land, it is also great to adding nutrients to your soil. So most of the time I'd run clover for 2 to 3 years, and from there I'd actually go to a brassica. So there's many different brassicas, and the nice thing about brassica is it's a very long leaf versus clover. Clover is very small. Another great one is chicory. Chicory, they seem to really love it on my property. I'm always seeing them eating the chicory mixed in with other stuff. So usually when I'm planting food plots, I might plant one section with this seed, one section with this seed. Other food plots, I'll actually intermix a brassica with a chicory. So you got many different options to consider when you're actually doing seeding of your food plot. So now that I've had clover in here, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going into a brassica. So just got a couple different packages. I always like trying some new seed, see if it can do something better for me. On this side, this brassica is going to be an annual brassica. It means that I would have to plant that every single year. Chicory is a perennial, so that will come up probably 2-3 good years, maybe a 4th year. And then it's same with this New Zealand premium. That is a perennial, which means that it'll come up every year. So I haven't really seen a difference in a perennial versus annual, but you can try. Just try it on the land and see what happens. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to use this seed. And then one other thing that I really liked is this Scott's spreader is battery powered. So just by pressing this, you can see how it's rotating and feeding out. And then what I got is I got the dial. And what I try to do is dial it in, because most of your bags will tell you, for instance, like right there, this bag was 9 pounds. It was good for 1 acre. You know, that bag plants a half acre. And what I'm going to do is, in this food plot, I'm going to actually take and mix the chicory in with the brassica and just have a mix of seed that goes on this food plot. Okay, now you can see that I've mixed those 3 different seeds together, and now what I'm going to do is get ready to distribute. So I have my setting set at about 5.5, and what I'll do is watch the spreading of it. One other thing to note is some of the seed companies have actually made colored seeds, so you can actually see it when you're distributing it. So what we're gonna do is you can see how the seed is being broadcasted over my food plot. Make sure that you catch all the different ends of the food plot. Now that the seeding is done, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place the bags on around the food plot that I seeded. The other nice thing is actually creating a log on when you seeded it, what food plot, and then what seed. So now that I placed the bags on there, the next step is actually to compact that seed down into the dirt. How I do this is using my ATV. Basically just driving it around, and what I'm going to do is really nice when it's wet, because then I can see all my tire tracks to make sure that I have covered and compacted the entire food plot. So basically, I'm just going to hop on the ATV. And all I'm going to do is drive up. Basically, I'll just continuously do this until the entire food plot is compacted. So, now what are we looking for? Now that the food plot's all ready to go, we are looking for sun and we're looking for rain. So hopefully you have rain within a week or 2 of your planting. Okay, let's do a recap of the high-level steps in creating a successful food plot. Step number 1, determine where in the woods you want to host your food plot. Step number 2, go out and clean it up. Clean up that area by removing stumps, removing shrubs, and doing a roundup of killing any green vegetation in that area, so that basically you're starting with a nice clean area. Once you got that done, now determine what the square footage is of that area, because that will help you with fertilizer and seed. Next, get a soil test done, because you can go and take care of this food plot, but if the soil isn't to great conditions, it just won't be a great food plot. So do a soil test. We do have a video on that. It's a real simple process. Once you get the results, definitely recommend, if they do have a startup of either applying lime or fertilizer, get that fertilizer in there in the ground before you actually start tilling up and everything. Let it settle. Same thing goes with the Roundup. The Roundup is going to usually take a period of time, probably about 2 weeks, to actually get everything dead. Now that everything is, food plot is ready, recommend tilling it, either through a disc, a tractor, or a rotor tiller. Once that food plot is tilled up, it is time to flatten it out. So basically I drag an iron behind me, and then what that does is it gets it so it's nice and flat. That way you don't have to worry about seed just rotating into the grooves. Once flattened, now it's time to seed. So make sure to look at the seed for the disbursement ratio and how much it should seed, and work off your square footage to get it spread evenly. Make sure not to overseed. Again, if you can get a nice seed that is colored, that will help you in determining distribution of how you distribute it on the food plot. Once the seed's distributed, you're all set to compact it. And compacting is just as simple as driving your ATV over it back and forth and just compacting it in the ground. And then the final step, make sure that it rains within a couple weeks. If you do have a water source, you could spray it down, but pray for rain, and then also look forward to this nice green food plot.